Good morning. Welcome to your last philosophy class for the month. We are going to just end your course today, right? So I hope I'm clearly visible, audible to all of you.
Yes, you are. Good morning. Hello.
Morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's begin today's session. Keep the back and neck straight and gently close your eyes. Sit in any comfortable posture. And as you close the eyes, take your attention to your breath. Just focus on your breathing and allow all other things to just remain the way they are, and you come back to the breath. Make sure that your body is aligned. Slowly begin to deepen the breathing. We'll chant Om 3 times, followed by 3 Shantis. Inhale deeply for Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Just observe the vibrations. Join your palms together and rub the palms together. Place them on your eyes. Very slowly, while blinking and looking at the palms, open up your eyes. Start coming back to the smile. Namaste to everyone. Let us begin today's session. So yesterday we were talking about Raj Yoga, and I told you about the vrittis and what each vritti is and how they are so inherently a part of our own life, right? We go through the vrittis during different time periods in our day. The different vrittis show up, right? So today we are going to we have discussed the advanced level practitioner, right? The Abhyas and Vairagya for advanced level student, then Kriya Yoga, where Tap, Swadhyay and Ishwar Pranidhan. These three things are there for intermediate level student, um, coming under Kriya Yoga. And then beginner level student Ashtang Yoga. So yesterday we wrote down all the limbs of Ashtang Yoga. So today we are going to discuss what Patanjali said about these limbs, because as per Hatha Yoga, these limbs mean little bit different things, and when you come to Raj Yoga, the meaning of same terms changes a little, right? So because he talked from the point of view of working on the mind, right? So when you are working on the mind, then same terms which are used in Hatha Yoga from a point of view of keeping the body healthy and preparing the body, their meaning changes when we come to the practices of Raj Yoga. Right, so we will begin with the yamas, right? The yamas are basically social rules, you can say. So Patanjali ji, he knew that most of us, we are going to exist in this society only, and we have to live in the society, and we have to practice Raj Yoga while living in the society. So he began with the rules that you are going to incorporate when you deal with other people. So this is going to be very helpful for you, because most people think that when you do yoga, you have to leave the world. So that is a myth, right? And in a lot of places, even in Bhagavad Gita, that day-to-day living has been emphasized upon, and how you can exist in this society and still practice yoga, right? So for a beginner, they begin with yamas, which are ways of dealing with the society. So what should be your behavior, your mindset when you are interacting with the society around you? You don't have to be away from the society in order to begin your journey, right? It is very advanced level where you leave everything behind. Before that also, there is so much work to put in, right? So you can already begin with the work. So yamas are, as I wrote, the social rules. So first one is ahimsa, AHIMSA, non-violence. Right? Ahimsa or non-violence, right? So this is one attitude that you can develop, right? Where we are acting more compassionately uh, with the circumstances, with the things around us, right? So non-violence not only means that you are not killing someone, it also means that one thing, you are not supporting that thing. A lot of people talk about uh, how there is animal cruelty, right? And they work towards that, but they are consumers of that food itself, right? So indirectly you are contributing to that thing, where your cause is correct, that you are fighting against this animal cruelty, but a lot of people who are again a part of this entire cause, they still consume certain things which will lead to animal cruelty, right? I'm not asking you to leave anything, or to leave any cause, or to participate in any cause. I'm just giving an example when I'm saying this, right? So basically, they are indirectly causing violence because of their consumption. The industry would never move, right, if there is no demand. So we are creating the demand, right? So this is just an example. Once again, I'm not here to influence your views or what you should do or what you should not do, right? It's just a hypothetical example that I'm taking, that our consumption is what is creating the demand, right? And if there is demand in a particular industry, it is indirectly promoting the harsh behavior towards the animals, right? So um, not only directly, it doesn't mean that if you don't go and directly kill somebody, that means that you are following ahimsa. No. In actions also, it has an indirect impact. And uh, if you see on the mind level also, sometimes you do not hurt someone, but you think of hurting them, or you think of hurting yourself. This is going on a lot these days. People are thinking of hurting themselves. They search so like one of the most searched issues on Google is suicide, right? And as soon as you do that, now the system has become so that you find helpline numbers. But earlier, you used to find first few searches used to be like that only, where you could get the answer. So now the system is developing, and this thing where first you will find so many helplines, right, where you can reach out. So hurting yourself, hurting someone else, these on a thought level also, I told you karma is on the thought level also, it is happening, and it has more strength, right? So removing violence from all levels is what ahimsa is talking about. It's not necessary that you act upon it, but just the thought even, that is going to uh, eventually, little thought grows big, 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 and you will never realize how it shows up, right? So when ahimsa is talked of, this is talked of where you are not hurting anything around you, right? And yogi realizes this to a very deep extent, because the yogi is able to see the depth of the connection between the nature and himself or herself. So they're able to see this direct connection. If you hurt the nature, you are going to get hurt, right? It's like if I put fire outside this room, and I believe that I am going to be safe inside because I am covered by four walls. It is like an illusion, right? I'm fooling myself. You will say she's fooling herself, fire is all around her. So she is going to get consumed in that fire, right? So in that same way, you guys also, and yogi also realizes that they are a part of this entire nature, not the other way around. Like human beings these days believe that they have the ultimate power, right? They can do anything they want, right? But we fail to see that we are not the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the nature, and that is what happened when COVID came in. It didn't see it, everybody was shocked, when COVID came in, because we never saw such stringent lockdowns being placed and sitting at home. And it was like, if the nature is angry, it will spare no one, and it made no you know uh, it was not biased. Everybody got COVID who got exposed, right? They did the virus did not say if that person was rich or held a higher position or lower position. No, everybody got impacted, right? If you were exposed, you were going to catch COVID, right? So eh, as soon as everything, if the nature shows its wrath on us, right, its fury on us, we are all going to be nowhere. We are here because of our surroundings, the nature supporting us to exist. Otherwise, if the nature doesn't support us, we will not be able to live, right? So the yogi recognizes this thing and goes into an attitude of non-violence because of it. So you guys can begin from very little things, where you believe you can make changes in your own lifestyle, or if you can go ahead and go volunteer for such things which propagate these things. It's totally up to you, whichever level you prefer. But today where you are, you have to move ahead in this thing, right? So this will help you to develop sensitivity towards everything around you, no matter how little it is or how huge it is. It's going to it does impact your existence. Every little thing that you don't like, insects, mosquitoes, these guys are doing something so that the life chain can go on, right? So this depth of understanding comes in the yogi, right? So then next one is Satya, Satya, Satya or truth, right? So we are not talking of the subjective truths, Suppose I'm saying something and you do not believe in it. We are having a normal conversation and you do not believe in that thing. So your truth is different and my truth is different, right? So it's when we talk of Satya, we are not talking of the subjective truths, right? We are talking of universal truths, right? If you read any spiritual text, you will find that certain truths are mentioned almost everywhere, and even if they are not directly mentioned, they might not be directly mentioned, something or the other around it has been said which reinforces that thing, like very common thing. If we are born, we are going to die, right? This truth is established, right? And but we lead our lives in such a way where we think we are immortal, right? Don't we? We take our day to day decisions, we lead our day to day life in such a manner that we feel that we are going to live forever, right? Every one in the society, especially in Indian society, they push us that go get, you will be well settled when you have your own home, your own car, and there is no basis behind it, right? It's just this mindset that we have, that we are going to live forever, and everybody knows you're not going to live forever. Anything that is born is bound to face death also. It is a reality, right? We live, we treat others around us in such a way that they are going to be there. We ill treat our parents, right? And we think that they will, if we go back to them, they will agree with us and everything. And so many people lose out on that time fighting with the people they love, just thinking that someday they are going to resolve it, right? But you know, um, it's universal truth. It is truth that everything is going to change, and they're going to go away. So anybody you love, go hug them, show them your love. Don't live your life as if you will get another chance, right? Live your life, especially in such uncertain times. Live your life as if this is it, and we are consistently living our lives like, you know like everything is going to be there as it is. We are making decisions on that basis. So when we talk of truth, we come in touch with the truth that is there, and we lead our lives according to that. Now when you get angry, maybe you will go and resolve it very quickly, right? Because you never know, right? And COVID, it has brought in so much uncertainty, we're thinking, oh, we'll not get COVID, it will not happen to us. Especially in India, people were very chill about it. They just said, we are not going to get COVID. And suddenly, it hits the people so close to you, the ones that you love, and you are in shock, right? So do not, start changing the way in which you live in accordance with the universal truths. It's going to make your life much, much easier, and you will feel light and peaceful. That is where the secret lies, not in the big things and little things that you will change in your life. It's going to have immense impact, right? So when truth is being talked of, yogi lives as if, you know change is the only truth. You will see yogi, doesn't know where the next meal is going to come from. It's so much, we will get tensed if we are not served lunch or dinner, or we don't get food. We will get so tensed. But yogi is living the life in such a way where they know and nothing is certain. you know it's just sometimes you feel things are, and other times you don't feel they are, right? So start aligning your life in accordance with certain things that are going to happen. You are just going away from them because they are too difficult to face, and they are. But eventually start, uh, you start accepting them, right? So let's come to the next one. Aste, Asteya, aste or non-stealing, right? So again, another attitude to develop, right? when you are dealing with the society. So, how somebody in your group or someone around you, achieves something, and you feel less about yourself, right? So you are pushed towards that attitude. Very less people get motivated in the correct manner when they see someone else succeed. Others just want to, they have this thought that I wish I could have this thing, right? So this attitude that we have developed, where we feel that it's through stealing that we can acquire certain things. So many people are stealing each other's ideas. There are so many law cases going on these little things where ideas were stolen and full businesses were developed. And even in our day-to-day life, when we do not take permission for something, right, and we take that thing, so it's not mine. And suppose because of the environment I'm existing in, I believe that it is my right. Okay, so all of us, we feel entitled to certain things, and we forget to take the permission of the person or the place where that thing actually belongs, right? So when we do this thing, when we incorporate this kind of behavior, we, we are not in alignment with the rules of nature, right? Because if you're going to steal, then some time around it's going to come back to you also. So be very mindful and careful when you do these things. And it's just a little thing, it's just about taking that permission. Just take somebody's permission. If you're trying to take something which is not yours, and that's it, you are done, right? Just that little thing is required where you take the permission. And this develops the non-stealing attitude, right? Where um, not only will you start seeing that you're not entitled to most things, right? You will also start developing a lot of humility, because you are constantly taking from somewhere or someone, right? Our parents, they provide us with so many things, but we are not entitled to those things, right? They provide for us because they love us and we are their children, but we are not entitled to a lot of things, and we think that we are entitled, right? So next time when you think of engaging with anyone around you, just make sure that you are taking the permission before utilizing something that you believe you need or you require, right? So it's very important to develop this thing, because the closer you look, the more you will see that you are not entitled to a lot of things, but you believe so, right? So it's always good to just ask, can I utilize this thing? Can I uh, take this thing? It will help you to incorporate, and it is a good reminder how dependent you are. Sometimes we develop a lot of ego, thinking that no, we have this or we have that. It helps you to keep that in check, right? Then we come to the fourth one, which is your uh, yeah, brahmacharya or celibacy. This is the uh, very surface level meaning of brahmacharya. BHRAM, that is M. BHRAMACHARYA. Brahmacharya. So Brahm is the god of creation, right? And Acharya, this word is how you conduct yourself. So conduction of yourself like you are God. That is what this actually means, but very loosely translated, it is translated as celibacy or control over your sexual urges. So one thing, I will talk on both the things, right? So deeper meaning is brahmacharya, where you are conducting yourself as if you are God. Doesn't mean I ego, right? I am God. So many people especially with Aham Brahmasmi, this thing became very famous. Adi Shankaracharya gave this thing that I am Brahma. This is what it means, right? So people started, thinking that, oh, we are God, we are God. No, not like that. Conducting yourself as if you are God means incorporating the traits of God, godly traits, conducting yourself with kindness. Whenever you interact with someone, there's a lot of compassion, the qualities and the traits of God, rather than, thinking you are on the top of the world, you are God, right? So be very careful, right? And then we talk of the sexual urges also. So this thing cannot, it cannot be forced. Okay, so a lot of people who move towards spirituality, they force themselves to not engage in sexual activities, right? They suppress their desire, which is a very normal human desire, right? Because it's the animal instinct, right? So they end up suppressing it, and then you hear about all the scandals that are going on around in the spiritual world, right? So because they are suppressing their desire, they are not understanding that brahmacharya is a state which naturally comes. Okay, it comes very naturally to you. You build your strength and mind also towards it, and then as a uh, in your practice, when you go deep into your practice, you will yourself not feel as if you are giving into that urge. So you rise above that urge, basically. You rise above the animal instinct. So that doesn't mean you're going to force or suppress your desire. And that also doesn't mean that you mindlessly engage in sexual activities all the time, right? So you reach this stage very naturally where you are prepared for it. It's not about suppressing. So whenever brahmacharya is talked about, never suppress. Okay, you will not, you have to trust that you will naturally reach the stage where you will uh, have that kind of mind where you don't want to waste your energy. Okay, so a lot of energy is consumed, right? Because you will see sexual activities, that is the thing that leads to the creation of another human being, right? So see how much energy is there, right? That it leads to the creation of another human being, right? So that same energy you can either expel through that downward movement, and in yoga, we are aiming towards upward movement of that energy. So see, the potential of that energy is so high. So if the yogi is able to reach that stage where they are able to uh, um, direct that energy upward, they will move on their spiritual journey very quickly. So that is why also celibacy is talked of. So it's not anything that you force, and it's not something that you will get free from very easily also. Okay, it will take a lot of time. So right now, just keep working, be more mindful. Whenever you are engaging in any kind of sexual activity, start incorporating mindfulness. That's a good way to start. When you want to incorporate this yama, for us, I'm saying, for practical purposes, this is the way you can go about it, right? Then last one we have is aparigraha, or non-possessiveness. Yeah. Aparigraha. Non-possessiveness. Right. So I have a great story about this one, because I have been there, right, being very possessive. So I'm really possessive about my clothes. Okay. So especially my shirts and t-shirts. So if I lend them to someone, means that person is very close to me. Otherwise, I won't share my clothes. Okay. So one time in the lockdown, my sister is like a very, socially uh, active person. She likes volunteering for a lot of things, right? And one of them is like donation of clothes, right? So in the lockdown, I still remember one time she came to me and she said that, I'm going to this and this organization, and I've taken out some clothes that I feel I'm not using and I need to donate. Okay, so she said that you do the same, go check your almirah and all and see whatever you can take out, what you don't wear, because literally, when we love some clothes of ours, we just wear them 24 into 7, right? It does happen when we get our favorite t-shirt or anything that we want. At least I have seen this thing. I wear it very constantly, right? And I will wear only those 4 5 clothes that I have. Others are just there for show off, right? Or just there for, like, kept over there because I want to have more clothes, right? So she asked me to clear my almirah, and I still remember, when I was able to observe this at that moment. That is why I narrate this incident a lot. So when I was taking out my t-shirts and everything, I still remember, I had a lot of t-shirts that I wasn't wearing. Okay, so I only wear, like I told you, 3 4 t-shirts that I really like and on repeat mode, right? So I was taking them out and I saw a lot of them I had just worn 1 or 2 times. But then my mind, started tricking me, right? So then my mind started saying that this t-shirt, you only have this color in this t-shirt only, so you should keep this t-shirt, right? Then the other t-shirt, I came to my mindset that, in this style you only have this t-shirt, so don't get rid of this. Okay, so one thing, color, then pattern, right? So again and again my mind was getting caught up, and I wasn't able to let go of a lot of clothes right at that point of time. I still remember my pile was really really small. So that is when I realized how attached I was to my clothes. And finally, when you reset your almirah, or you go back to the clothes that you haven't seen their face for a really long time, so for a few days, you get this whole fascination that every day you are wearing one of the t-shirts that you saw. So that went on for 7 8 days, and then I was back to square one. I was only wearing those 3 4 t-shirts that I generally wear, and it was done. Right. So most of the t-shirts that I kept, they were not even coming in full use, right? And I keep washing these clothes over and over again and wearing these only again and again. And most of us, do the same thing. So I don't think there is like any, uh, clothes are not less, right? But because we have this possessive attitude towards our clothing, towards all other things also, like for me it's specifically my t-shirts, right? I cannot let go of them. But for all of us, it's different things. And it's not that the world is, people are struggling from hunger, or they don't have clothing. It's not because there isn't enough, right? We all have enough, but it is our possessive nature which is causing that scarcity, right? So much food is every day wasted in so many homes, right? It's not properly, like, if you are not consuming, you do not have the attitude of sharing it with someone. So many people have so many clothes. The clothing industry is creating so much pollution, and still we see that so many people don't have clothes. Why is this happening? Because we put a price on the clothes. There's so many clothes in malls, in everywhere that you see, but still people do not have clothes to wear, don't have ample uh, clothing where they can change their clothes again and again and rewash the other ones. It's because of the possessive attitude that we have, that things are not getting to the people who need it. It's not because things are less, right? Food is not less. There is a scarcity. I will not deny that, but it is not that much. Everybody can have their own fair share of food or clothes, but we as a species, we have created the concept of money, the concept of only some people being able to acquire certain things. We have put up these barriers, and it is only because of our possessive attitude. So let go of this possessive attitude when you are next time you are dealing with someone. If you feel that you do not use something, it might as well go give it to someone you feel where it can be utilized, right? So when I'm trying to work on this attitude of mine now, earlier it wasn't there, but I recognized this thing last year where I saw how possessive I was, and this thing is seeping into my life, and maybe in a lot of other aspects also, which I'm yet to recognize. But take out this time to think about these things, where your possessive attitude is hurting someone else, right? So yogi, someone who is beginning the path of Ashtanga Yoga, they believe they work on this non-possessive attitude, right? Let's come to niyamas. Niyamas are mostly personal rules, right? So how I conduct my own self. So earlier I was seeing how I'm conducting myself in respect to everyone who is around me. Now I'm seeing how I'm conducting my own self. So first thing is short. Cleanliness, Saucha, short or cleanliness, right? Very important attitude in life where you maintain your own hygiene, right? Where you clean your surroundings, like I told you in pranayam class also, setting your space. Setting your space doesn't only mean where you set up the space, it also means regularly cleaning that space so that you can practice more from a freer space of mind, right? And you will see if your room is messed up, so is your state of mind, right? When you see something which is scattered all around you, you also feel very chaotic within. So how you keep your environment around you is going to impact the state of your mind, right? So one thing is external cleanliness, maintain that. Second thing is cleaning the body. Yeah, bathing every day. Now winters are coming, so we feel so lazy, we don't want to we go without bathing for 3 4 days, right? So no, not doing that. Maintaining that cleanliness where your body is your temple, right? Body is the temple, right? So you have to maintain the cleanliness, regularly cut your nails, clean your eyes, nose, ears, teeth, everything, in Shatkarma, you can do Jal Neti, Sutra Neti, you do so many things where you are cleaning the body, right? Because toxins tend to accumulate in the body. So keep on doing those practices so that cleanliness can be maintained. And on a more deep level, cleanliness of the thoughts. As you clean everything around you and you maintain cleanliness in the body, you will see thoughts also become to get start to get cleansed, right? So cleaning of the thoughts is also emphasized when we are talking of shots. It's not only the physical cleanliness that we are talking of, right? So surrounding yourself with the right kind of books, the content that you see, all of these things are going to influence how you think. And if the thoughts are not clean, then you will not be able to keep yourself clean, nor will you be able to keep your environment clean. So it's again coming from the thought level only, right? So cleansing is so important. Then next one that we come to is your Santosh, Santosh, contentment, right? So, if you guys are currently in a complaining mindset, it is very likely that whatever you are aiming to achieve and whatever you attach your happiness to, when you achieve that thing, your mind is still going to be in the complaining mode. So, you will enjoy that thing for a few days and then again you will go in complaining mode. Right? It's like ordering something from Amazon, right? One you are complaining that it's not coming in the a number of days that you require it, then the thing comes, you get obsessed with it, use that thing for a few days, and then everything is like back to normal, right? But before that, a lot of excitement, right? And then everything is back to normal. Maybe you stop even utilizing that thing that you had ordered, right? So something like that. In life also, if you are constantly waiting for something to get delivered, right, and you are placing all your happiness over there, means currently you are in a lack mindset, means currently you are in a complaining mindset where you are only seeing what you don't have. And most people do not work on their mind. They think that acquiring something, attaining something is going to give them that happiness. And sure, it does. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does more than other things, right? But they don't work on their mind. They don't work on this lack mindset. So when they acquire that thing or get that goal, achieve that goal, even then you will see that eventually they come in that complaining mindset. In a research that was done, people were like, seen when they won the lottery, right? So some people who were this study basically showed that human behavior remains the same, right? So people who had won the lottery, they followed them around for a few days, right? And when they followed them around for a few days, they realized that when they had won, few days they celebrated, those people they celebrated, and eventually they came back into their own way of living. So basically, if they did something before they had won the lottery, they were still doing that thing. It was just that brief moment of celebration that was there, and then they came back to their same lifestyle, right? And that is with most of the things. It's not bad to have goals or ambitions, I'm not saying that, but you need to understand that you have to consistently work on your mind in order to even appreciate those achievements in your life, right? So constantly working on the cleansing of the mind, constantly working on this negative attitude of the mind, you need to do that. You will see most people who are depressed or have anxiety, they have everything they need, right? It is their mind that they are not working on, and when they don't work on their mind, how can they um, come out of that? It requires a lot of work. But satisfaction, if you are satisfied today, I can be very sure that when you achieve your target or goal, you will be satisfied, right? So it's satisfaction that you are aiming for, not your goal. It's good to have goals and ambitions. Once again, ambitions. I am once again saying this thing. It's always good to set your mind to achieve something. But the attitude with which you are approaching it will also heavily count on how much you will be able to enjoy when you fulfill that goal or aspiration of yours. Right? So that is what Santosh talks of. Develop this sense of contentment right now, and you will see everything is falling into place, right? Then we have right, the last three are your Kriya Yoga only, Tapas, Swadhyay, and Ishwar Pranidhan. TAPAS, Tapas, Swadhyay, SVADHAYA, and Ishwar Pranidhan. ISHWARPRANIDHAM. So this I think we have discussed before also. Tapas is more about building the mental strength. Okay, tap literally means heat, and tapas directly translates to austerity, right? So you are putting yourself out of your comfort zone where your mental will is being developed. Suppose fasting, it's good for you, so choose one day in a week where you fast. Okay, so when you fast on that one day, you will see your mental strength is going to get developed. First time you will totally be like, where is the food? When is the next day coming? And eventually your body will get used to the fasting and you will be able to fast. Right? So developing your mental will by getting out of your comfort zone. That is what the one day fast did. 6 days you were consuming everything. But one day you chose that I'm going to work on myself, right? Something is good for me. Let me try that. right? So development of the mental will is what austerity for us will mean, right? Then Swadhyay, again, I talked of cleanliness. So attaining cleanliness of thoughts will come when you introspect, when you are becoming aware of how you are thinking. That is when you begin to change it, right? If I'm not aware that there is a problem, I won't be able to work on it, will I won't, right? So I need to recognize, and that is what Swadhyay does. It's self introspection, it is reading the books that will get you in a state of self introspection, you know, studying, study of those books. You know, sometimes you read a book and you have that aha moment, right? So that kind of thing, which helps you to introspect consistently how you are. And at the end of the day, you can take out some time where you go through in your mind only, go through everything that has happened. It will help you to introspect better how your day was, what mistakes you made, and how you can work on it, right? So these things are going to come into your life and you will be able to do them better, right? So I will quickly finish the remaining because time is almost going to get up. Um, uh, Almost ending of time, right? So last is Ishwar Pranidhan or surrender to God. So again, great practice for you to put your faith in something and just believe that that thing is going to take care of everything. That doesn't mean you do reckless actions and just believe that somebody is going to one day come and set everything right. No, Ishwar Pranidhan is more about the sense of surrender that you develop and the sense of belief that you develop that whatever is happening, it's happening for a reason and it is happening because there is a higher plan, and you put your ego aside and surrender to whatever is happening. It helps you to flow with the flow of life, not be rigid about what should happen or what should not happen. Just have faith that everything around you is going to align, right? And that sense of faith and surrender comes in when you choose to surrender, right? Everything that you are doing is surrendered to some higher entity, right? Some higher entity. When it is everything that you are doing surrender to, you will perform your action as if it's a form of worship. You know, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, all of them are talking about this thing only. When I took the class, I told you guys, you know, it's like a sense of surrender, right, that you develop when you are doing your actions. So that is what it's going to help you with. When you surrender your actions to a higher energy, you will be more careful about how you proceed, about what you do, how you do it, right? And again, it's a great way for you to, you know, keep that ego under check. So these are your yamas and niyamas. So first you, or if you are planning to begin on the path of Raj Yoga, first you need to reach these stages naturally. Don't force yourself, reach them naturally, where these become a part of your life. And when they do, then you proceed to the next one, which is asana. Yesterday also we wrote down asana, right? Posture. So Patanjali ji said posture is stable and comfortable. These are the two qualities of posture that you know, whenever you are doing asana, next time see, are you stable in it? Are you comfortable in it? And observe, will you be able to meditate in this, right? If you think you have acquired these three boxes are checked, then you can take that asana for your meditation. Okay. So sitting posture generally, when you come in sitting posture, that's the best posture for you. That's the best asana. So Patanjali ji did not mention what asanas are there. He just said asana should have this quality. So for your hatha yogic practices also, you can incorporate this thing because eventually you are preparing your body for meditation only. So whatever asana you do, see if you are stable and comfortable, right? And when you do sitting posture, you have to make it what? Stable and comfortable. Now you know what you are aiming for when you sit in your meditation classes. If your body is moving, it's not stable. If you are feeling as if you are entering the posture with pain, then it is not comfortable. Always choose a posture you are comfortable in. Eventually, pain is going to come up because it's the game of the mind. But at least you are sitting comfortably so that that pain doesn't overpower you, right? If you're entering into something, enter with something which is comfortable, right? You are comfortable in that posture and there is stability, right? So asana, when he mentioned, he said that this is required. This is the main requirement according to Patanjali. This is what asana, stable and comfortable position. That's it. Nothing else, not the Hatha practices of what asana you should master. Nothing like that he talked. He just said it should be ideal for meditation, right? Then he came to pranayam. So he said when your body becomes stable, it's only then that you can come into pranayam, right? Regulation of the prana. More than the breath is acting as a regulator to prana only, fine. Right? A lot of people say pranayam is breath work, right? But it is not. You guys understand that it is deeper. It is working on the prana, and breath is a way in which the prana manifests, right? So then he said in the beginning of pranayam classes, I told you Patanjali ji what his meaning of pranayam is. It's Puraka, Rechaka, and Kumbhaka, right? These three things are three pranayams that he said, the way in which you are inhaling, the way in which you are exhaling, and then the retention. He said these are pranayams, not the Brahmari, Ujjayi. No, he said these are pranayams, the way in which you do these day-to-day actions. And fourth one he said was the Kevali Kumbhak, which I told you, automatic retention. And he said the automatic retention is what you are aiming for. So for him, pranayam is this stoppage in the movement of inhalation and exhalation. So I told you in pranayam classes also, your main aim of pranayam is reaching Kevali Kumbhak. And when you read the definition of Patanjali for pranayam, he has said when there is cessation in the movement of inhalation and exhalation, that is what pranayam is. But you begin with inhalation, which is the first type of pranayam, exhalation, second type of pranayam, and retention in between these two processes, which is third type of pranayam, he said. And eventually you reach a stage where the kumbhak stage prolongs, natural kumbhak. That is what he meant when he said pranayam. Okay. So yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar. Pratyahar is next. Withdrawal of senses. I told you in Gyan Yoga also, unless and until your senses are not stable, you cannot withdraw them. So all of the previous things, they are stabilizing the mind and the senses so that now you can prepare yourself for withdrawal. Okay. Because it's only when you withdraw that you can start putting in the effort of for the inner work. Now you are, this is a bridge between the all the external things that you are doing and the internal processes that you are going to engage in. So this is like a bridging portion. According to Patanjali, the first 5 are external limbs. Okay, first 5 are working on external, even though the 5th one is bridge between internal and external. And from 6th one, internal work begins. Okay, so pratyahara is withdrawal of the senses. When you withdraw the senses, then you can begin the inner work, which again, first one is your dharana. Dharana is concentration, right? So concentration is required when you, now you have withdrawn the senses from all the objects and you give it one object to consistently concentrate on, right? Again and again, you are going to get distracted and you're going to come back, right, to that object. So this entire process that is going on where you are putting in effort to stay with your object is concentration, right? And one moment will come when this concentration deepens and effort is suspended. And now you are with your object without any effort. So then comes your next stage, which is dhyan or meditation, right? So meditation is being with that object without any effort, okay? Which leads to the next stage when you are in a state of meditation for a long period of time. You reach the stage of absorption, right, which is known as samadhi, where you are absorbed. Now the quality of the object you are able to understand. So suppose you are gazing at a flame, right? Initially you're trying to keep the attention on the flame. These are different levels of the same thing only, right? Level 1 to 3 of the same video game, right? So dharana, then dhyan happens, right? So first you are just trying to keep the eyes on the flame, right? Then at one point of time you are able to do it for long period of time, no distraction, right? And then a point will come where you will just be aware of the quality of the flame, which is light, right? You won't be bothered by this is the color of the flame, or this is the flame is moving like this, right? Or this is the point where I am looking, right? You are absorbed in the quality of the flame, which is light, right? So dharana, dhyan, samadhi, these happen together, and then you can come back also, right? Then again you go through the process, you come back. Sometimes when you reach a particular stage of samadhi, then you won't come back. Okay? But before that, you will consistently come back even from the absorption. So it can be only for a few seconds in the beginning, and then you will work on increasing that. So this is dharana, dhyan, samadhi. These are your 8 limbs, the beginner level 8 limbs of yoga, which will take you to your final goal, which is again Kevalya, as mentioned by Patanjali ji, right? So these are this is the end of your syllabus where we have completed Ashtang Yoga completely. Yes. I will take any doubts in pranayam class because right now we are already few minutes late and you have your therapy class, right? So keep your doubts, okay? And we'll discuss them in pranayam. Today we'll take out some time. I'll give you some question and answer time over there. So you guys can, then we can discuss those things, right? And we will finish today mudras also. So be present in the pranayam class. We complete the course over there also, right? So Om Shanti to everyone. I will see you all in pranayam. Yeah.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Bye bye.